voiceamerica.com.
Welcome to Crime Prevention 101 with host Susan Bartelstone. We're so happy you've joined us this weekend. Over the next hour, you'll learn the tips, tricks, and vital information that'll help you keep yourself confident and safe. Now, here's the host of Crime Prevention 101, Susan Bartelstone.
Hello, everybody. And yes, indeed, welcome to Crime Prevention 101. You know, it's the beginning of November. It's a new month, a new time, and it's just so wonderful being back here with you today. And I hope you've all had a chance to listen to at least some of the shows that I did in October in commemoration of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If you haven't had a chance, these shows are all archived on my Voice America host page. You can hear them at your convenience. We talked about domestic violence in the Jewish community. We talked about the Family Justice Centers, which was such an innovation in addressing the domestic violence issues. I talked about the ways that so-called, ordinary people can become involved, like the group of salon operators and hairdressers who formed the organization Cut It Out. So if you haven't had a chance, please go and listen to some of these shows. I have got an amazing extra special show for you today, too. We're going to be talking about the U.S. Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women. But before I introduce my guest, I have a quick comment from a listener first. I've got a fanboy. And for those of you who don't know what a fanboy is, that is a faithful listener who points out all your mistakes. And truthfully, I love fanboys. I'm so glad I've got faithful listeners. So somebody took me to task because I sometimes say, don't touch that dial right before we go to commercial break. So my fanboys, I love you, and please know I do know that there's no dial on a computer, and that's which is where most of you are listening to me. So I apologize, and from now on, I'm going to say, don't touch that mouse. So I hope that's better and everybody's happy with that. Now, for my show today, in 1994, the U.S. Congress passed the first Violence Against Women Act. And this was such an important piece of legislation because it finally acknowledged the severity of the crimes that are associated with domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and so forth. And since then, there's been a paradigm shift in how the government has addressed the issue of violence against women. And the Office on Violence Against Women, which is OVW, was created in 1995 to provide national leadership and significant guidance on the government's behalf. And since its creation, the OVW has awarded nearly $3 billion in grants and cooperative agreements and has provided technical assistance to state, local, tribal, and nonprofit entities to respond to this mandate. On their website, the OVW states, by forging state, local, and tribal partnerships among police, prosecutors, victim advocates, healthcare providers, faith leaders, and others, OVW grants programs help provide victims with the protection and services they need to pursue happy and healthy lives and safe lives while simultaneously enabling communities to hold offenders accountable for their violence. Yes, indeed, I am. Love that. Now, my guest today is Cindy Dyer, the director of the Office on Violence Against Women. And as director, Ms. Dyer serves as liaison between the Department of Justice and federal, state, and international governments regarding these crimes against women. And she is responsible for handling the department's legal and policy issues regarding the implementation of the Violence Against Women Act. She also oversees the administration of 12 grant programs involving almost $400 million in funds. Now, prior to her appointment to the OVW, she was an ADA in the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. and she was the first prosecutor to join the Family Violence Division. And in 1998, she became its chief prosecutor. She's got an amazing resume. I can't get all of it in here. She served on the board of the Texas Council on Family Violence. She has assisted in proposing and drafting legislation regarding victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. She's received a ton of awards. I'm just going to say welcome to Crime Prevention 101, Ms. Dyer.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm just thrilled. Okay, let's jump in right here. Tell me about the Office on Violence Against Women. How did this come about?
Well, it came about in order to implement the Violence Against Women Act, which was landmark legislation, which was passed by Congress in 1994. Our office was created in that legislation, and it is specifically here to recognize the severity of the crimes associated with domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and dating violence.
Can you talk a little bit about the actual act and what was, because it was a landmark act, and I want people to know why it was.
Well, absolutely. The act was passed in recognition of the severity of these crimes, and it was passed as part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. It is a very comprehensive legislative package which is designed to end violence against women. It has been reauthorized on two occasions, once in 2000 and once in 2005. And really, it just goes to show that Congress was really trying to seek a remedy to this terrible crime that's going on throughout the United States. And there really has been a paradigm shift, not only in how this crime is addressed, but also in the ways that we think about this crime.
And they put a lot of money behind it too, which is very, very gratifying.
Yes, each year there is a certain amount of money that is authorized to the Office on Violence Against Women that we turn around and give out in the form of grants all across the country to local units of government, to nonprofit organizations, to technical assistance providers. We have an annual budget of approximately $400 million, and since the passage of this act, we have given out over $3 billion in grant funds.
Yes, that's amazing to me, and like I said, it's really gratifying that the government has finally stepped in here and put some weight behind what has to be done.
You are correct. And I'll say that the United States is really heads and tails above most of the rest of the world, because we are one of the few places that have a direct office just for violence against women, with a director, and which gives out money to local organizations. So we really have a lot to be proud of.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was looking at a list of some of the grants that are currently in force now, and there's an abuse in later life program. There's
yes.
a campus. Yeah, let me read this list because this is amazing to me, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about some of these programs.
Okay.
Abuse, right? Okay. Abuse in later life. And we've got a campus grant program, disability grant program, grants to encourage policies and enforcement of protection orders. That's fantastic. Legal assistance for victims grants, rural grants, STOP grant program, state coalitions grant program, supervised visitation grant program, traditional housing grant program, tribal coalition program. This is for domestic violence, and tribal governments program. If I got all of them, that's a pretty comprehensive list.
Yes, it is.
I thought maybe just talk about a couple of these programs and what's involved with it, and so forth. Anywhere you'd like to start?
Well, one of the best places to start is with the STOP grant program. And the term STOP stands for services, training, officers, and prosecution. And this is a grant that goes to every state and territory automatically. It's a formula grant, and it's a formula based on population. So the amount of money that each state or territory receives is based on their population. And this is a grant that's unique because the federal government gives this money back out to the states, and the states can then provide this money into the cracks and crevices of their own communities, and allows the communities to determine how to use the money. The money that goes from the STOP grant is allocated not only by population, but also within the money that the state gets. The state must use 30% for victim services, 25% for law enforcement, 25% for prosecution, and 5% for courts. And ironically, in case you can't tell from my accent, I'm from Texas, and I was a prosecutor in Dallas County. And my office and many of the local shelters and local nonprofit organizations in Dallas received money from the state of Texas, but that was actually originated from the Office on Violence Against Women in this STOP grant formula.
Ah, okay. That's kind of ironic that you went from one end then to the other end of.
I think it's ironic, but it also gives me an excellent perspective because I have personally seen the end result that these grant dollars can make, and I have personally seen the transformation that can occur in a community as a result of the passage of the Violence Against Women Act in 1994, because I happened to start my Family Violence Division in September of 1994.
Ah. Excellent. And this program is running in all 50 states?
Absolutely. It goes automatically to all the states, territories, and the District of Columbia.
Wonderful. So that is amazing. How about the Abuse in Later Life program? Just a few comments on that.
Sure. The Abuse in Later Life program is it's one of our other programs, and all of our other programs other than STOP is a discretionary program, which means that communities or units of local government throughout the country can apply directly to the Office on Violence Against Women. And this is one of those programs. It is specifically designed to address the issue of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation, specifically including domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking against victims who are 50 years of age or older.
Have there been, are there statistics about that? How much?
There are statistics. We absolutely know that as women age, they become more vulnerable to many crimes, specifically the crimes of domestic violence, sexual assault. And this particular program really teaches people to be specifically responsive to the issues that women in later life face. For example, many of the victims of the crime of elder abuse that I worked with in Dallas, they have a difficult time accessing a normal shelter because they may live in an assisted living facility, or they may require on-site care, and therefore they might not be able to go to a regular shelter where you have to be able to be self-reliant and go up and down the stairs and, cook your food in a kitchen that's a communal kitchen. So there really are specific issues that older women face.
This is so interesting to me because I honestly had no idea, even in terms of the breakdown of ages of what's involved in this domestic violence issue.
That's a good point, because while any woman at any age can be the victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking, women of different ages are at different risks. And we know, for example, with our teen population, that they are at unique risk. They are just learning the dating relationship game. They are just experimenting. They communicate in a different way than adults do. They rely so heavily on the computer and the cell phone and chat rooms and texting. And and their communication is different, and sometimes the way that we reach those victims needs to be different. With the women in older life, they are victimized not only by their intimate partner, but very often my victims of elder abuse that I saw in Dallas were being victimized by adult children. Now, of course, sadly, some of these adult children were victims of child abuse, and you see intergenerational violence. Also, another factor that I saw a lot with older women is that they relied on that older child to care for them, which put them in a very precarious position.
I see. Okay, now, Ms. Dyer, we're coming up on our first break, so let's hold that thought. We're going to come back and talk about some more of these programs very, very shortly, so don't touch that mouse, you all.
News, opinion, your voice counts. Call toll-free 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime, How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.fightsafe.com for more information. You'll also find information there on Susan's upcoming Crime Prevention 101 personal safety teleseminars. Think fast, talk fast, fight smart would stress the many opportunities you have to deter or defuse a criminal encounter and how to use your brains instead of your muscles in a fight. Look for the new book information or sign up for Susan Bartelstone's personal safety seminars at www.fightsafe.com today.
Adding fractions is nothing.
For real?
Look, these are denominators. You multiply this one so that it's the same as that, and you add them up.
Man, that's easy.
Charles Bennett dreamed of returning to the old neighborhood as a teacher, but without money for college, only half of his dream came true. He's back in the old neighborhood.
Well, enough math. I gotta deliver these sandwiches.
Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. A message from the UNCF and the Ad Council.
Have you ever thought about having your own internet talk show? Well, if you said yes, then click About Us. Then click Be a Host to get more information. Or just call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417.
Say that again?
480-294-6417. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. We invite you to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, and Susan will address some of these on future shows. Send your story or idea to solutions@fightsafe.com. That email address again is solutions@fightsafe.com. Now back to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone.
And welcome back, everybody. And I am speaking with Ms. Cindy Dyer, who is the director of the Office on Violence Against Women. And we were talking about some of the grant programs that the OVW administers. And let's pick up with it. We were talking about elder abuse grant and teen grant. So let's get back to that, what we were talking about, Ms. Dyer.
With regard to the issue of teen dating violence, because we really want to focus some of our dollars and some of our efforts on prevention. This is an excellent point of entry for us to get to teens before they become victims of teen dating violence or future adult domestic violence. And we have recently partnered with the Family Violence Prevention Fund, and we're going to be launching a national campaign in January that addresses specifically the issue of teen dating violence and these teens. And there was a lot of research that was put into this to make sure that it'll be effective. We have taken into account the fact that they do rely so much on digital forms of communication. Another related grant program that we have is our campus program. This is another discretionary grant program, which means that colleges from around the country can apply directly for grant money to the Office on Violence Against Women. And it is designed to strengthen the higher education community's response to the crimes of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and dating violence. It helps campuses to enhance collaboration between that college campus and local criminal justice and victim advocacy organizations, and to provide better services for victims of sexual assault specifically and dating violence that occur on college campuses.
And those services are located on the campus itself, correct?
Yes, but it is important that they collaborate with their local communities so that they can not duplicate services and so that they can work together. And specifically, we have one of our programs, which is our flagship initiative, which allows groups of schools to apply together and then to share in best practices.
Well, that's a great idea. And pool resources and do really.
And not reinvent the wheel. Some of our schools have been campus grantees for a few years now, and they have really worked on models of communicating with their students and raising awareness that are brilliant. And this allows them to share those best practices and to share them with other campuses, and really allows us to stretch our dollars further than they would otherwise go.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful program. Now, let's see. There's something also called the Disability Grant Program, and I'm guessing that's aimed towards people with disabilities?
You are correct. Our Disability Grant Program, we had our first grants were awarded in 2006, and this has some similarities to our abuse in later life. We recognize that women with disabilities are more vulnerable often to be victims of these crimes. And so there is a specific disability grant program which is specifically, it's for education, training, and enhanced services to end violence and abuse of women with disabilities. It was created, as I mentioned, in the Violence Against Women Act of 2005.
Now, this is so interesting to me because it's not a topic that I hear about very often, and in fact, I'm surprised that it occurs to such an extent that there really needs to be funds directed towards it. And I think you've given me a good idea for a future show. Maybe I will, after we finish our show today, I'll get a name from you, and I'm going to focus some attention on this problem because if it's big enough.
That would be a great idea. There are some wonderful organizations that are providing services specifically for women with disabilities who have suffered either domestic violence or sexual assault.
And even just regular crime. Mugging
that's right.
And so forth. Yeah. Because I do know...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do know that a lot of criminals look for easy victims just for plain old street kind of crimes. So... I think that will make a very interesting show and something people should know about. So that is terrific.
You're right. Specifically, certainly some women are physically disabled, which makes them very vulnerable. Some may be hearing impaired, and they therefore it's difficult for them to communicate what has happened to them. We need to be able to provide hearing sign language translation not only when the police come out, but for the prosecutors, and if they go to a shelter, they need to be able to communicate with the staff. The other thing, and you brought up an excellent point, which is that batterers are evil, and they do target people based on not only someone who would be vulnerable, but also they will target people in the hopes that if they do report the abuse, that they would be unlikely to be believed. And so they will specifically target women who are mentally challenged or who suffer from a mental illness in the hopes that, number one, they won't report, but if they do, they hope that nobody will believe them or take them seriously.
Interesting. Now, this is one of the grants that a state can apply for, correct? This is so that if they're not aware of it, maybe we can shed some light, and get you some business.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. It is a discretionary grant, and all of our grants are very, very, very specific. Given the statute, Congress tells us exactly how much money will be used for this particular program, what it can be used for, and also who can apply. And for this grant, states can apply, units of local government can apply, Indian tribal organizations or governments can apply, and nonprofits or other non-governmental victim service organizations can apply. And they can apply. It's a discretionary program, and their applications will be reviewed by experts in the field, and each application is then scored.
Oh, that's fantastic. And one of the interesting things about doing this format of a radio show is that I have the capability of sending an email link to anyone that's got an email address. And maybe we'll sit down and I'll hammer out a list to kind of get people to listen in on this program that might be able to use this grant program for their disabled population. So I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, we have a website, and all of our grant information is available on our website. It's ovw.usdoj.gov.
And I've been to that website. It's an amazing website. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it because people can sign up for your newsletter and get all sorts of interesting information. But I'm going to speak about that again, too, towards the end of the show. This is very exciting for me now. Let's see, my list. Next on my list, we had grants to encourage arrest policies and enforcement of protection orders. Extremely important.
That one is actually one that I'm fairly familiar with because in about 1996, I wrote Dallas County's first application for a Grants to Encourage Arrest program grant from the Office on Violence Against Women. And that was receiving that grant award back in the mid-90s was the one thing that changed the scope of the community in Dallas. And I have seen it on a personal level, and I know of it throughout the country. This grant is very broad, and it can be used to get additional prosecutors or additional law enforcement. It can be used to obtain specialized prosecutors and law enforcement who have specialized knowledge in working with victims of the crimes of domestic violence and sexual assault. And that has made such a difference if you are a victim and your prosecutor is someone who really wants to do this. This was not the case they got assigned that day, but this is the type of case that they spend their career working on that can make such a difference. And another good thing about this program is in order to get it, you have to have a coordinated community response. You must have prosecutors that are working with their police officers and that are working with their nonprofit service providers in their community to make sure that any victim, wherever she enters the system, can be put in touch with all the other service providers in that community.
Okay, this is fantastic. Now, I think we're actually coming up on our second break. So let's hold that thought. Oh my God, I hope I get through all this list just because these are some amazing programs here. So let's take a break. Do not touch your mouth. We are coming right back.
Ask the experts. Call toll-free right now, 1-866-472-5787. And ask our All-Star team to answer your question. That's 1-866-472-5787.
Thank you for calling.
VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime, How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.fightsafe.com for more information. You'll also find information there on Susan's upcoming Crime Prevention 101 personal safety teleseminars. Think fast, talk fast, fight smart, which stress the many opportunities you have to deter or defuse a criminal encounter and how to use your brains instead of your muscles in a fight. Look for the new book information or sign up for Susan Bartelstone's personal safety seminars at www.fightsafe.com today. Talk, talk, talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787.
That's it.
VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. We invite you to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, and Susan will address some of these on future shows. Send your story or idea to solutions@fightsafe.com. That email address again is solutions@fightsafe.com. Now back to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone.
And welcome back again, everyone. Yes, this is indeed Crime Prevention 101, and Susan Bartelstone here. And I'm talking with Miss Cindy Dyer, the Director of the Office on Violence Against Women. And we're talking about some of the grant programs that she oversees on behalf of the OVW. And there are 3 particular grants that I want to talk about at this point. Let's talk first, Ms. Dyer, about Legal Assistance for Victims grant.
Okay, this particular grant is really near and dear to my heart because it addresses a very crucial need that victims have that a lot of times people don't initially think about. I think that the average person knows that a victim of domestic violence needs to be able to get a protective order. She needs to be able to call 911 and have the police come out. She needs to have a prosecutor prosecute that crime. But another thing that she needs in order to escape the violence and to get herself and her children to safety, she needs to have an ability to get a divorce from her abuser. And so many grant programs, they provide shelter and they provide a prosecutor to prosecute her case. But when all of that is done, she's still married to this guy. He still has a right to go and get her kids whenever she wants to. And so our only grant program that can be used to fund attorneys to get a divorce and child custody issues taken care of is the legal aid to victims. And that is so important because while, protective orders are obviously a crime prevention tool, legal aid to victim is equally, if not more so, a crime prevention tool because victims don't leave an abusive relationship because they're afraid of a lot of things. They need to have a house and they need to have a job and they need to have protection. But they also won't leave if they think they'll lose their kids. And that's what happens if they don't have access to a qualified legal aid attorney.
No, I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right. That's costly, and here's a great program for that.
Yes, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about that.
Okay, and how about the Transitional Housing Grant Program?
Transitional Housing Program. This, too, is sort of near and dear to my heart because while I was a prosecutor in Dallas, in the evenings, one night a week for 9 years, I went and volunteered at a shelter for battered women and their children. And one of the things that the shelter that I worked with did in 1999 was open up a transitional housing program. They are not, and they were never funded by our grant because they didn't accept grants. But it's such an important program. Transitional housing program is designed. Everybody knows that when a victim needs to leave somewhere in the middle of the night because it's not safe in her home and she needs a place to go for herself and her kids, she goes to a shelter. But she can only stay at the shelter. You know, your average emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence is for 6 weeks or maybe even 30 days. But it's going to take a battered woman longer than 6 weeks or 30 days to get a protective order, find another place to live, find a job to support herself and her kids, finish her education, find child care, and come up with first and last month's rent. She cannot do it all in 30 days. And so the availability of transitional housing programs are absolutely crucial. This is a place that after she's gone to the shelter and she's ready to make a permanent escape from this abuser, this is a place that she can go for the next 12 months to 24 months and really get back on her feet and ensure that she does not have to return to that or another abusive relationship.
Oh, this is a really important point, and again, I'm learning all of this. I hope my audience is learning all this. That there are these.
Yeah, there is help out there, and it's also helpful for people, just everybody in the average public. I like for them, even if they're not going to apply for this grant, they need to know about this grant because it lets them know the things that a battered woman needs, and it lets them know the obstacles that a battered woman faces when it's time to leave. It's not just a matter of, well, just go to a shelter. There are so many other things, and that is why it is so important that communities have a network, a web of help for victims that provide not only the protective order, not only the police response, but also the shelter, the long-term housing, and the civil legal assistance.
No, that's why I'm here. I'm trying to get that word out for some of these things that are available. All right, now let's talk a little bit about some of the tribal programs. I've got domestic violence and sexual assault coalitions, and I've got a tribal government program. First of all, a lot of people aren't even aware of domestic violence or sexual assault problems that are occurring with it. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about that and what these grants address.
Well, I'm glad that you asked, because if you live in a state like Texas where we don't have any federally recognized tribes, the problems that are facing Native women are not first on our mind because we don't see a lot of Native victims. But if you live in a state where there are reservations, where there are tribal communities, this is an incredibly devastating problem for them. Studies show that Native women, American Indian and Alaska Native women, are more likely to be victimized by sexual assault and domestic violence than any other population in the United States. And so it's important.
Really?
Yes, that's true. And it's important that we respond to those needs. And because of the unique jurisdictional issues that go along with reservations and in what the legal term is Indian country, land that is owned by a tribe, they don't have the same ability to just call the local police a lot of times. They may not, they call the tribal police, but not every reservation has a tribal police. And they don't have their own, often, court. They rely on the state court or the federal court. And if you go to a federal court, you can imagine federal courts, they're trying big RICO cases and drug racketeering and drug things. And then they also are supposed to be able to respond to a misdemeanor domestic violence, and that's really difficult. And so they have unique problems that the rest of the country really does not see. And so these two specific programs that are taken care of we have a designated tribal unit within this office. They are culturally competent. They are aware of the problems. And so many of our tribal communities, they don't have any infrastructure or resources. It's similar to some rural parts of America, but they also have those jurisdictional problems, and so it can really be a frustrating situation for victims in Indian country.
I can't even imagine a federal court trying to deal with a family violence case. I mean,
right.
And
They have the jurisdiction much of the time, and so it's a frustrating situation not only for the woman, the victim, and her family, but also for the courts. It is a frustrating situation, but we're working on it, and I really think that helping to establish really strong networks of community providers is the first step in stopping that violence, and that's exactly what these programs do. They support community advocacy organizations in those tribal communities. They can go to support the creation of tribal courts and tribal law enforcement and make sure that any court or law enforcement that they have is in tune with the unique needs of domestic violence and sexual assault victims.
See, I'm thinking there would be a very interesting program that I would like to do also on that issue. I think it's something that the general population doesn't know very much about, and I'd like to kind of shed a little light on it. Maybe we'll talk about that, too.
You could do a whole show on it, for sure.
Uh-huh. Excellent. And you've given me a lot of material here. Now, okay, though, this is wonderful. Now, there's a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about. Now, the office, the OVW, also undertakes a number of special initiatives.
Yes,
and I've got a couple here that I'd like to ask you a little bit about. And if you also tell me exactly what a special initiative is, but I know that you're working with the President's Family Justice Center initiative, and I did interview Casey Gwynn.
Oh, good.
He was one of my my October shows.
Good.
About the Family Justice Center, which is just an amazing. God, to think it took 14 years to get a place for where all these services are just in one stop shop there.
Yes, that's a wonderful initiative. Well, an initiative is, as I said, our grant programs are given to us, and they're all based in the Violence Against Women Act. They're all statutorily created, and we don't have a lot of flexibility. We are given the amount that we give out and who can apply for it and what the money can be used for. But we do occasionally have the ability with money that we have to do a special initiative, which is just something that we recognize as a great need in the community, but is not directly addressed in the Violence Against Women Act. And so it allows us to really to try something new, to do a new approach. And the President's Family Justice Center initiative is a perfect example. And it is a wonderful initiative, and I must say that Casey Gwynn is just truly a visionary in this field. A Family Justice Center initiative, for those who didn't have the opportunity to hear the eloquent Casey Gwynn explain it, it provides a one-stop shop for all the needs that a battered woman has. And so it takes a lot of these concepts that you have brought up, the need for civil legal assistance, the need for specialized prosecutors, the need for specialized police officers, and it puts them all in one place so that a victim does not have to schlep herself and her children all across town to 18 different offices, but rather she can go to one place and take care of everything that she needs to take care of all at the same time and in the same place.
And I believe that the President authorized about 15 centers to be...
Yes. The initiative was originally begun with, I think, $30 million, and the office at that time took applications from communities across the United States, and 15 President's Family Justice centers were begun at that time. And I'm happy to report that many more have developed since then. One of them that we have recently had the privilege of funding is the New Orleans Family Justice Center. And if ever there was a place that was the perfect spot, because so much was being rebuilt anyway, might as well rebuild it in one location rather than spread it out across the city. So that's one example of one that has come about recently. And in New York, they are really aggressive, and they've recently opened not only the Brooklyn one, but also the one in Queens.
Yes, that's where I am as well. Now, I think I'm located in New York City, and I am proud that we've got two.
You should be, and Bronx is scheduled to open in 2009.
I'm hoping we get 5. We've got 5 boroughs. Let's get 5 here. And I'm gonna do whatever I can to help too. Okay, everybody, now let's just hold this thought. We've got our final break coming up. Don't touch that mouse. Don't touch that dial. Don't touch anything. We're going to be right back.
Have you ever thought about having your own internet talk show? Well, if you said yes, then click About Us. Then click Be a Host to get more information. Or just call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417.
Say that again?
480-294-6417. VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime, How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.fightsafe.com for more information. You'll also find information there on Susan's upcoming Crime Prevention 101 personal safety teleseminars. Think fast, talk fast, fight smart, which stress the many opportunities you have to deter or defuse a criminal encounter and how to use your brains instead of your muscles in a fight. Look for the new book information or sign up for Susan Bartelstone's personal safety seminars at www.fightsafe.com today. News, opinion, your voice counts. Call toll-free 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. We invite you to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, and Susan will address some of these on future shows. Send your story or idea to solutions@fightsafe.com. That email address again is solutions@fightsafe.com. Now back to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone.
And here we are back again. I hope nobody touched anything because I know I didn't. And we're coming down to the close of the show. And I'm talking with Miss Cindy Dyer, Director of the Office of Violence Against Women. And I'd just like to, just any final comments about the future direction for the office and what you see happening?
Well, thank you. I first want to take this opportunity to thank you for dedicating your time and this show to address the issue of violence against women. October, as you have mentioned, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it makes such a difference when people have access to the media, take this opportunity to really draw attention to the issue. It really makes such a difference, and I'll tell you, I know this personally, because since I was a hotline volunteer and I spent one night a week at a shelter, we always knew that whenever the local newspaper or the local radio show or a national television show, Oprah, anything, if they devoted a segment or an article to violence against women, it brought it up in people's mind. It had the opportunity to let victims know that help was available, and our calls that night would increase. Always, without fail. So please know that it really does make a difference. And for anybody who is listening to this show, who either they themselves are a victim, or if they know someone, their mother, their daughter, their sister, their friend who is a victim, let them know that help is available and that there is a national domestic violence hotline that anyone can call. It is 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. It is a national hotline, and they can personally put you in touch with local organizations in your community that can provide assistance to victims. And so thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to share that information with victims.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and you've given me so many great ideas for how I'm going to follow up with this show. It has just been a pleasure talking with you. So we're going to be speaking again. Now, everybody, I just want to, again, I'm going to thank my guest today. I want to make sure that you go to their website, which is www.ovw, that's O Oscar V Victor W William, .usdoj.gov, and I'm going to actually be posting a link to this website on my own personal website. I'll talk to you about that in a few minutes. They have a wonderful newsletter on their website that you can sign up for and get alerts and get important information about what's going on. They also have resource lists, including fact sheets, and they've got a fact sheet on exactly what grant programs they are administering. They have a fact sheet about violence against women in Indian country. They have a faith-based and community organization resources fact sheet, and they have a fact sheet for what faith leaders can do. That's just a few. They also have a section for employment and internship opportunities. For those of you that would really like to do something a little more about this problem or be interested in the work of this office, go check that section out, because you may find the job of your dreams there. And I know I'm going to look. Also, I want to just say, as I always do, just remember, everybody, that there are no absolutes in a crime scenario, and no advice can address every variable. Each situation has to be evaluated individually and responded to in the way that you instinctively judge is the best. It is my aim on this radio show to provide you with the information and options that are going to help you make an instinctive assessment very quickly. And it's my pleasure to be here to be able to do that. I also always say that to those of you who are survivors of any kinds of crime that we're talking about on the show today or anything else, please understand that nothing that happened to you was your fault. Even if you think that you used bad judgment in a situation and left yourself vulnerable, that is never an excuse for a crime. It's never an excuse for violence. And it's really important that you call yourself a survivor and not a victim, and that you understand that with the proper professional help, you can put what happened into perspective and get on with your life. I'd also like to say that if you'd like to hear any of the past episodes of Crime Prevention 101, and as we said several times during the show, I've got some really great shows on domestic violence, other shows as well. They're all archived on my voiceamerica.com website page, my home page there. And you can just go to voiceamerica.com and plug in my name, Susan Bartelstone. Will take you right to Crime Prevention 101. Or I've also set up a direct link. You can just put in www.crimeprevention101.com, and that is going to take you directly to my show host page. Also, remind everybody that I have posted show notes on each episode of my show on my personal website, which is dearsafetysolutions.com. And on that website, I am going to have a direct link to the OVW website. And also, don't forget to go to the safety tips page on my dearsafetysolutions.com website as well. There's lots of good stuff there that might be useful for you. And I have my domestic violence safety plan for those of you who might need one, or if you know somebody that is in a domestic violence situation that might need a safety plan. There's a really good tip sheet on the website. And there's other good tip sheets and stuff as well. Also, if you've got a question or a comment about today's show, and fanboys, I love you, please give me your feedback. If you've got a safety concern that you'd like some help with, if you got a webmail you'd like me to comment on, if you've got a show idea for me, just go to my website, dearsafetysolutions.com, and post it in the response box on the home page. It's on the left side. That's the best method. You can also email me, solutions@fightsafe.com. Got a lot of great shows coming up for you in the future. I'm going to be talking about non-traditional methods of healing through creativity in the arts coming up. You're not going to want to miss that show. It'd be a crime not to listen to that show. So stay tuned and stay safe.
We hope you got some useful information and inspiration this week on Crime Prevention 101. Susan Bartelstone invites you to join us again next Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time and 2 p.m. Eastern Time here on Voice America. Have a great weekend and a safe weekend.